Oh, okay, welcome everybody. We're really happy that you're joining us today to talk about people and well-being. As you'll find out, well-being is very important, and how our people are within the firm is, is priority for us. And we'll talk about some of the activities that we have done and our sort of future plans. So today, we're going to look at lessons learned. We're going to talk about well-being initiatives and support in place for M&R. And we're going to talk about our next steps in what we're looking at in people moving back to offices. Do you want to do that next slide then, Sandy, and then we'll introduce ourselves. And then just to let you know who we are. So I am Natasha Broomfield-Reid. I'm the Diversity, Inclusion and Wellbeing Manager here at M&R. Been in place coming up to a year and a half, but I've done sort of a lot of diversity inclusion work over the years. And over to Sandy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning everyone and welcome. Yes, I'm Sandy Boyle. I'm responsible for HR at Mills Reeve, and together with my team we look after over 1,000 colleagues based in 6 locations across the UK, and of those 1,000 colleagues, over 500 of those are lawyers, and obviously one of the key aspects of the work that we do is around well-being, as well as the other activities you would expect in terms of HR. And in terms of my background, I've been with the firm since 2001, so quite some time. And prior to that, I was also in professional services, but with an accountancy firm rather than a legal firm.
Thank you, Sandy. And yeah, and just to say as well, I suppose in terms of my role, as well as well-being, I look at the whole wider diversity inclusion, how we can, as a firm, increase or enhance our practice to make sure that we are a inclusive firm for everybody, for our clients and for our staff. So those of you who've joined us before, you'll be familiar with our little codes at the front here. These are our codes if you want to directly get in touch with us. You can use your phone and scan over it and get in touch with us. But Sandy and I, we're both having a conversation this week. We've both got quite individual names. We're dead easy to find. So even if you didn't have this link, there's not many, well, there's only one Natasha Broomfield as far as I know. I don't think there's many of the Sandy Boyles. So we are easy to find that way. So we'll move along to things. So if you want to do that, then we've also got this slide later on if you haven't got time. You ready to the next slide? Thank you, brilliant. So we are going to be recording this. So, just to make sure that you're okay with that, they are being recorded. If you've got any questions, ask us in the Q&A box. You can ask that throughout the session. And we do have one poll that we're going to do shortly, just to sort of find out a little bit about yourselves, a little bit about what you're thinking around wellbeing. And then obviously you can ask any questions throughout the session. So what have we done? So we're going to can we go to the next slide, please? Mine's not showing for changing for some reason. Right, so we've got a quick poll. Nisha, if you can release the poll, that would be great, thank you. So what we're asking is, do you have an agreed plan in place for more office-based working as the government is encouraging people to return to work? So where are you with your plans? Brilliant, thanks everyone.
That's great, thank you.
Excellent. So a couple more to fill in. Excellent, a few more. Brilliant. So far, a lot of you, yes. Some already back in, the sort of percentage are sort of back in. We'll wait one more. We've got 46 seconds and we'll close the, there we go. Don't worry, if you can close it now, Nisha, that gives us a good idea. Thank you. So the poll for those who've had responded, so 66% have had it in place. That's really, really good. 25% not yet, and for 9% if you're already in the office. So that's really, really good. So, hopefully today, things that we'll share with you will help you to start your plans, start you to think about what you can do, and so hopefully some of the information we'll share will be useful to you. So brilliant. Thanks for that. If we can close that poll, that's brilliant. Okay. So at M&R, what we have got within the firm is we have a wellbeing strategy, and this has been in place for some time. And what we want to make sure within the firm is that we look at all aspects of well-being. So our well-being looks at mental well-being, financial, and also physical. But within that, we also look at digital well-being as well. So we want to make sure we've got a whole process in terms of looking at all types of well-being. And, you know, we have a well-being strategy group that we meet sort of 3-4 times a year, and we address and look at different aspects and look at what we can support and what we can provide support for our teams. And through, you know, the sort of COVID and through coronavirus, you know, there are a few lessons learned that we have had in place and things that we have done. Could you do the next slide for me, please, Sandy? Brilliant, thank you. So in terms of what we've learned, one of the things we learned is definitely that one size does not fit all. And we've recognised that there are different experiences of people, whether it's somebody who is a parent or a carer, somebody living at home, you know, those who are going into the office, because we know that some of you may be in that same circumstance where you've had people who are going to the office and have been for some time, right from pretty much near the beginning. For example, for us, it's been people in facilities, and making sure whatever role you have and whatever your experience, we want to make that, you know, equitable for you, that you've got whatever you need, what support you need. And that goes on to the next point about, you know, making sure people have tailored approaches. But obviously, we need to make sure that our clients' needs are met, the clients get the excellent service they always get, but also that the teams are supported to make sure they do that as well. And, you know, we very much recognise that employees' wellbeing can change over time. You know, I do a lot of support with the teams, and we've noticed that, you know, it can go up and down. You can have weeks where staff are feeling okay. Actually, you know, it's probably at first, for example, you had people who were a bit daunted. Then you had people like, I'm actually really enjoying from home. Then you get, oh my gosh, as people are on further lockdown, but, you know, people might have different experience. So we really noticed that people's well-being and wellness has changed over time. So what we've done is we've tried to arrange different aspects of support and initiatives so that we can put something in place for all different people, because we know, as we said right at the first slide, one size does not fit all. So we've put something in place that hopefully that everybody can get what they need in terms of well-being. But the one thing we found is that communication is key. So it's really important that ongoing communication is happening. People really value hearing about what's happening next, what are next steps, what's happening in the firm, because that really helped their well-being in terms of feeling, okay, it's okay, they're addressing it. And one thing, for example, that still happens every day, key members of the team of the firm meet on it every morning, and they discuss what happens next and what needs to happen. And then we share those sort of thoughts, and, you know, with our colleagues to make sure that they know and they're kept up to date. Can the next one, please? So what things have we done to keep in touch? So that whole communication, like I said, has been really important. So one thing we have done right from the beginning, and I'm continuing to do that, is I lead on wellbeing calls. So what I do, I will have a sort of office Zoom across the firm, and it's an opportunity for take a break. So we really want people to take a break, you know, take that time out, because often when you're working at home, sometimes you're stuck to your computer and we don't realise we're not taking a break. But also they can get support on how they're feeling. Do they need anything, whether it's technical or whether emotional support, or whether they need HR advice or things to be done or change their hours. So the wellbeing calls have been really good in sort of capturing how people are feeling. And like I said, we've done that through the whole of COVID, and we've continued to do that on a weekly basis. And we used to have the specific catch-ups for those who have got differing needs. So we have one for everybody, but people can also join one if you're a parent or a carer. And we found that to be really, really useful. A lot of the people who join those calls are so supportive to each other, because for those of you who've got children at home, we know that's a real daunting task. When, you know, thankfully there's no school at the moment, so we haven't got to hold the homeschooling. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's very tricky when you're trying to work from home, particularly those who, you know, got to work full time, or we have got quite a few of our staff that have got children with additional needs. It can be really tricky. So that parent and carer support has been really useful. I mean, a couple of our people who attend that said those wellbeing calls, their lifeline, because they've really actually valued those calls and actually talking to others about what they're going through their sort of issues at home, working and having their children. And also those, we've got quite a few people who are carers as well. So there's understanding of if they're shielding, what the responsibilities are of being a carer, and also obviously doing the work of them. And those living alone, we found that was really useful, because, you know, it's it can be isolating, let alone, you know, not being able to go and being as free as we used to be. Even now that people are, apart from those areas that are in lockdown, you know, we're still restricted in some ways. So we know that those living alone, again, it's like added support, and they sort of love logging into those wellbeing calls because they're also linking in with other people who live alone. So it's really useful to find that really beneficial. We'd also link in with people who are furloughed and those who are still working in offices. So we all wanted to make sure that whatever you're doing, whatever your circumstance, that you have got support in terms of your well-being. One thing we do, we make sure we've offered through our HR teams, we've offered flexible working options, because we know that, like I said, people have got different situations at home. So, you know, whether you might have a partner who works or you might not have a partner, all those sort of things. We're making sure that we're as flexible as possible within the remit of work. And even so, for those who, for example, find difficulty working at home, some people have come into the office earlier than sort of recently, because it's about, you know, well-being, and they could be in a situation where it's tricky for them to be at home and they're not able to work. And we have, we call them wellbeing supporters, but they're very much, they're trained in mental health first aid. So we very much encourage people to use those. We've got wellbeing first aiders that have been, you know, critical. EAP, we've made sure that we are constantly let people know about the EAP and support. And one thing we're really proud of, we think we're a little bit different, are our Zoomachinos. So this is something that was developed before, but it was a cappuccino thing. But what happens is people go into our innovation hub. We have an innovation team, and they can click on, let's catch up with somebody in the firm. So it could be a generic chit chat. It could be about a hobby. It can be a well-being catch up, but that's their opportunity to have that, to take a break, have a tea or coffee, take a drink, and go and meet with like-minded people. So that has been quite fun for people, because obviously also it's really good because you get an opportunity to meet people and speak to people across the firm that you maybe not been able to before. So our Zoomachinos have been really good. I've heard about ones gardening, reading books, Netflix, you know, all sorts of keeping fit, as well as our wellbeing Zoomachino. So they've been really, really valued. And I think that's good that we're doing a little bit something different. We've started buddying up people as well. So if there's somebody, for example, on our living alone, we've budded people up to say, you know, if you're both living alone and you want to catch up with each other and support each other, you know, that's great that you can do that. And that's been really useful for people. And also, you know, in every call I do and every wellbeing catch up, I say to people, have you got all these adjustments and everything you had? If we've got our disabled staff, making sure that they've got the kit and it's working, and reviewing that, making sure if any equipment needs to be sent out, because we know that at the beginning, people are like, oh, I probably didn't need that equipment. But as time goes on and we're working more at home, we've made sure we've kept that discussion going. What do you need at home? We've also, our employee engagement, our employee network groups have also been really, really engaged and supporting with our teams in making sure they're okay. So we've got a BAME Allies network, we've got a ability network for disabled colleagues, and we've also got Spectrum for LGBT plus colleagues and allies. And they are very much playing a part, you know, in terms of checking everybody's okay as well. So there's well-being in those aspects. And particularly around, for example, when there was George Floyd and the issues with BAME people being more disproportionately affected by COVID, we made sure we had additional support in place for that and checked everybody was okay and if they needed anything and what the impact and how we could help. And we're ongoing, and Sandy's going to talk about this later in the sort of pulse surveys and our pilot that we've done. But we've really made sure on a regular basis we're seeking feedback on people's well-being needs. Has anything changed? Anything you need? And one thing we found that, you know, in all our sort of surveys, one thing that came back was that our daily emails from our senior and managing partner that is the thing that they really thought was really valuable to them. They loved all the different activities, but for them, they were like, I want to know what's happening in the firm, because we know, you know, in this sort of situation now, you know, it's a bit uncertain. Everybody wants to know, you know, how we are doing, how the firm is working to address everything. So that sort of daily emails was really, really, cheers Sandy, was really important in getting that information from people. So as well as sort of those sort of aspects, what we do in sort of the communication, which we continue to do, we make sure we're providing information and practical guidance to everybody within the firm. So we've got a whole dedicated platform which we give a whole range of advice and information on mental well-being, physical well-being, financial well-being. We've got we use Nudge as a system to people to get financial well-being and support and advice and discounts and things. So we make sure that we give all aspects of well-being, even things like we've had homeschooling activities, or even now it's the holidays, the activities that children can do at home that are not school related, but also give them fun. You know, we try and give as much help to our teams as much as possible so that they can have an easy life at home. So we give them as much information there. We give a lot around sort of activities and free activities to manage their well-being. Also relationship support. We're very much about the whole holistic approach to well-being, and not just, oh well, it's about being at work. So, you know, we know that being at home, as we have been, it could have great positive impacts on a relationship, but also there could be some more difficult situations. So we also give advice and information about sort of external support about relationships, around mental health. So, because we know that, for example, internally, that, you know, we have a lot of support, like I mentioned, our EAP, our wellbeing supporters, our occupational health. But sometimes, for, you know, people may think, I don't want to, you know, to speak to internal staff, and that's entirely their choice. So we also do give them support in terms of external, you know, where else you can go if you don't want to use M&R, or use M&R and an external support. You know, we've also done things like provided webinars and information on domestic abuse. As people know, within society now, you know, we are in a different circumstance, and this has resulted in a high number of people reporting domestic abuse. And so we've made sure that we've given advice and support to anybody that may be impacted by that, or somebody they know has been impacted by that. Also, we've got coming up some webinars around bereavement, sort of how people could, one, you know, awareness about bereavement, but also what support they can have, you know, what support would help them, but also with us. As I mentioned before, we have provide financial wellbeing information, and we've got a range of e-learning support as well. So video, as well as we provide and promote external videos, we've also got our internal ones on sleep, on nutrition, physical health, mindfulness. So we make sure we're constantly updating and making sure people have got that. We make sure we've got guidance on remote working and IT. IT have been brilliant in M&R for this whole situation, because as we know, you know, IT has been critical. And we've even done things like have pop-ups. So every couple of hours on our computers, we have a pop-up that would either say, take a break, you know, take some time out to, whether it's have a drink, talk to a colleague, go for a walk. And we also have a pop-up that says, you know, do you need support? And it signposts them to the different sites of support we have. And that just allows people to, it's okay to have a break, and it's okay not to be okay as well. So that's been going on throughout these last few months. And we've also got our own in-house yogi. So we have a member of staff who is a trained yoga teacher, and as well around the mindfulness, she does that support, and she does a Zoom yoga session to all our teams, if anybody wants to go on. So we try and do, you know, a whole range of activities that can actually just make sure that people are generally okay. And the last week or so we've been promoting as well, you know, trying to get those water cooler moments, the times where you're having a coffee or a tea and you're having a chat with somebody. You know, if there's somebody you haven't chatted to for a while, grab them, you know, ring them, or give them a text or WhatsApp, or have a Zoom with them, because there might be people we're missing who might not be okay. So we're constantly trying to find ways of getting people we may not be hearing from, just keeping that contact going and that communication. Next slide now, please. I think it might be over to you now, Sandy, is it? So Sandy's going to talk about how we're planning and preparing for future needs.
Okay, thanks, Tash. In terms of sort of moving forward and looking forward, we've been, you know, giving a great deal of thought to what's ahead of us, and sort of trying to anticipate needs in particular areas going forward. We've had some localized lockdowns more recently, so in obviously Manchester and surrounding areas and so on. And considering, you know, the impact that that's going to have on people's well-being, and what additional support we might need to consider for those areas. Increasingly, we are returning people to work who have been on furlough, and making sure that we support them in that transition from having been on furlough and having kept in touch with them in terms of what's been going on, but then returning them to work either at home or in our offices as we gradually increase the numbers of people in each location. And again, I'll come on to this in terms of return to work in a moment, but again, considering what adjustments and what support we need to put in place for people as they move back to working in offices on whatever basis that may be. And again, Tash has already mentioned this. One of the things that we've been keen to do throughout all of this is to make sure that we engage with people, that we you know, have continuous feedback from staff as to what they feel they need, what's working well, what can we take from this and develop and use as we move forward. We've also, as part of the work that we've been doing, been keen to support line managers by providing them with the appropriate sort of guidance and support that they need, things that they should be looking out for. Clearly, where the majority of your workforce is working from home, you know, that changes the dynamic, and so we need to make sure that people are looking out for any particular sort of issues or telltale signs if people are struggling, whether it be through workload, through isolation, through you know, support that they're having to give to others in the home. And I suppose the sort of the main thing is the move to certainly more people working in our offices, as the government sort of encourages people back to the workplace. Quite when the full reopening of offices will be, given social distancing requirements, is you know, unknown. But clearly, you know, Boris and the government are trying to ensure that people do start moving back to workplaces, provided people are adequately supported and feel comfortable in doing so. During the course of lockdown and beyond, we've done 3 pulse surveys, which have been incredibly helpful. We've developed these, you know, out of our daily meetings, and they sort of targeted specific areas. The first pulse survey was very much around the pretty dramatic and immediate transition to home working for those people that could work from home. The other 2 surveys have focused much more around people's well-being, what's working well, which wellbeing initiatives have they found most useful, least useful, and sort of some of the things that Tash has talked about in terms of the internal comms that we've been putting out to people, and so on. So that's been really helpful. The other thing that they have considered has been around the sort of return to work and what that might look like, how comfortable people are in terms of returning to work and on what basis. And that's been really informative in terms of our planning for having more people in offices over time, to understand what it is that you know, people are worried about, what their issues are, what we need to make sure that we cover off as part of that. As Tash has already mentioned, that certainly up until the end of May, we were the senior partner, Justin Rittman, and Claire Clark, the managing partner, were emailing the whole firm every day from the move to home working until the end of May. From June, we have decreased that slightly in that we're issuing comms to the whole firm on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. And if there's anything in particular that we need to do in between time, then there'll be additional email comms. And people have found that immensely reassuring in terms of hearing from the senior leadership team. These are the things that are going on, how the business is doing, what the particular issues are, and also just spreading good news as well in terms of what's been happening, any particular client successes, client wins, and so on. And that has come through incredibly strongly in the pulse surveys in terms of how helpful and how valuable people have found that. We've also, in 2 of those pulse surveys, asked people how they feel about their own well-being. Just to sort of get a sense check as to, well, all things considered, you know, how do you feel about your own well-being? And I'm pleased to say that most people have either felt very good about it or good about it. Clearly, there were some in the okay, and then there were a very small number of people who had particular issues or concerns about their well-being. And as Tash has already identified, you know, we put in place a range of different support initiatives to help people with their well-being, and hopefully, you know, there has been something for everyone as part of that. And again, the feedback from those pulse surveys was that the majority of staff felt that the firm was doing enough to support their well-being, and that there was nothing that they felt that was missing that we should be doing that we weren't doing. And so again, that was helpful and reassuring in terms of what else we might need to do. In terms of managing the return to work in our offices, during the end of July and the beginning of August, we ran a pilot for 7 working days, across all 6 of our offices, where we asked for volunteers for people to return to work to the office in which they're based. And that could have been from anything from 1 day to all 7 days. It was entirely up to people how they wanted to manage that. And again, the feedback from that we want to use to sort of put across the business to hopefully spread some good stories and some good news in terms of what that experience was like, what things people were concerned about, we needed to be doing more work around. And you can see there in terms of the sort of headline responses to that return to office pilot survey and so on, was that people were feeling that the experience was good, very comfortable, it was safe and clean. People were happy that they could socially distance and that people were adhering to the social distance measures. And then in terms of which statement best summed up their thoughts on returning to work, 48% of people found it a really positive experience and look forward to returning. 52% found it a really positive experience, would be apprehensive about working in the office full time. And I think that echoes the feedback that we've had from other and earlier surveys, is that people value aspects of being in the office, but equally they have valued not necessarily having to commute into the office every day, and so on. So I think, as you'll see in the next slide, we're working towards people having a sort of a mixture of home working and office working, depending on the requirements of clients, of colleagues, of the development of others. So that's something that we're looking at as we move towards the date of the 14th of September, whereby we want to hopefully have a good number of people across all 6 offices. That also coincides with our next cohort of graduate trainees who join the firm. And to ensure that they have a really first-class experience, we think they need to spend some time with colleagues in the office as well as some time at home. Clearly, one of the concerns about returning to working from an office was around travel to work and commuting and using public transport. And again, people were generally pretty positive about their travel to work experience, and how they rated that. So it was at the higher end of sort of feeling comfortable and safe rather than the lower end. And here are a couple of quotes from people as part of the survey that they were asked to complete at the end of their sort of day or days in the office. In terms of next steps, we have a group of people who are looking at both the short, medium and long-term office working and return to work in offices. Again, what we're very keen to do is to make sure that we capture the best bits of what's happened in the past, in terms of what are the things that people have valued and found good about predominantly working from home, but also bearing in mind the other considerations around collaboration, around development and supervision of colleagues and so on. So clearly there's the sort of short-term move to a return to offices, but in terms of in 12, 18 months time, again, what do we want that to look like? And then we can work back from that over the intervening period. And I think, much has been written about this, that people want some sort of flexible, blended approach to both working with colleagues in an office, but also in terms of working from home. Clearly it opens up all sorts of opportunities for people to live elsewhere. It has implications for your recruitment. And so there are, many facets to that and many considerations to look at. Again, reviewing roles where it's beneficial for people to be mainly office-based. There are some roles that can only be carried out in the office. And throughout the whole of this, we have had a sort of skeleton staff, or a very small number of people in each of our offices supporting those who are working from home. And again, it's reviewing, well, what is the requirement, what sort of mixture would work well for our clients and for our colleagues. And I suppose lastly and very importantly is identifying those risks and concerns that people have, and this is where feedback has been so helpful, but around well-being, around transport, around supporting others at home, the particular issue around BAME employees who are disproportionately affected by COVID-19. So again, making sure that we build into our plans and future planning those sorts of considerations, and making sure that they're factored in. So that's really everything that Tash and I wanted to say as part of the webinar. Hopefully that's given you a flavour for the sorts of things that we at Mills Reeve have done and what we found has worked for us, but also our thinking around the future and moving back to more people being based in offices and so on. So this is really an opportunity for people to ask questions if you would like to. Tash, over to you.
We've had 2 questions so far. So the first one, I'll do the second one first. I sort of answered the first one, but I'll repeat it. So somebody has asked, do you find there is resentment from staff who have carried on? By the way, everybody else, add more questions if you wish. Do you find there is resentment from staff who have carried on working towards those who were furloughed? And if so, how did you deal with that? In my experience so far, I haven't had that much resentment. I mean, whether it's not all coming to me, and Sandy can answer as well, but we haven't had a major any sort of feedback or resentment from staff for those who are furloughed, because what we've tried to do is keep those connections close. So those who are furloughed are still in regular contact with their teams. They are regularly having catch-ups. They are engaged with their friends and colleagues. And obviously then I have a catch-up with them in my sessions with them, and we always make sure they're kept part of the team and resent. But I haven't felt that we've had resentment from the team, from those who are furloughed. Have you had anything around that, Sandy?
No, not particularly, Tash. I mean, I think it was, we didn't furlough a great number of people. Largely those roles that couldn't work from home. And so I think people understood that and the basis of it. And again, we were quite transparent in the communication to the whole firm around those people that were furloughed and the reasoning behind that. So yeah, I think on the whole, people were happy and understood why we were doing what we were doing.
And the first question was, are we finding resistance to people coming back full time, and how do you plan to deal with that? And I sort of responded and said, and you sort of, because this question came in quite early, but I think you answered some of it. We had a mixed response, haven't we? So a lot of people would blended, weren't they, to either do one, do some days in the office, some days at home. So we're trying to have like a flexible approach to that. But like Sandy mentioned in the slides, and I've mentioned in this response, there might be some job roles where you are more likely to have to be in on most days. Sandy, do you have anything you want to add?
I mean, I think at the moment anyway, we couldn't accommodate everybody in all our offices. Yeah. So, for some future time, it will be a case of a combination of some people being in the office, some people working from home, and we won't be requiring, or there won't be a requirement for people to be working full time in an office for some time. Yeah.
Any more? They're the only 2 questions that we had so far. Has anybody else got any questions at all they would like to ask?
So there's another question here, Tash. Have you had to contemplate any consultation for redundancies? In terms of contemplation, I mean, clearly we're keeping an eye on our resourcing requirement, but at the moment we aren't contemplating any redundancies. We've had a number of principles that the board have been working to throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and one of those is to ensure as far as possible that we retain all our staff and avoid redundancies. And that continues to be one of the sort of guiding principles that we're working to.
Oh, somebody also has asked track and trace. How is the organisation supporting this? Oh, I don't know if we've had much involvement in track and trace, have we, Sandy?
No, I mean, I think, we keep a record of who is in each office each day, and so if there is an issue, then we can support track and trace with any requirement that they have, would be my sense.
Yeah. And I know that the people in the offices, when people I talk to, they're very clear about when people come in, they like to know, we'd like to get find out if they've been away, or so we know that it's safe for them to be in work, don't we? So we do check how people, where people have been, so we can check that it's safe for them to be in the office.
Yeah, prior to anyone coming into any office, whether it be a colleague or a visitor, we ask them to sign a declaration in terms of that they aren't showing any symptoms, that they haven't been in contact with anyone who's tested positive, they aren't subject to any quarantine requirements, and so on. So we have that record both for our purposes, but also that would assist with track and trace. We're looking at how we can, as we increase numbers in offices, we're looking at how we can sort of streamline that by having some sort of QR code as people come in, and they can just sort of sign and declare before they come into an office. And then we have the reassurance that we require in terms of people coming into our buildings.
Okay. Donna Williams has asked, what sort of percentages are you working to? Can you see it yourself? I'm reading, you can probably see it yourself, around staff returns. So is it 25% now, 40% December? How have we looked at percentages of those returning?
Yeah, for the pilot, we sort of set a maximum that we were happy with for pilot purposes, which was broadly about 20% of normal capacity. And we're looking at sort of, you know, in terms of our people returning to offices in the course of the next month, build that up to sort of maximum social distancing requirement, which would be, you know, roughly 40–50%.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of returning to the office, again, somebody said, how are you deciding? And we've got this group, haven't we? We've got a working group together that are looking at sort of principles in those sort of roles that will be in the office, and those will be blended and mixed. So that's how we're looking at that, making those decisions. Anything else you want to say to that?
The key focus is there. The key focus there is around the development of less experienced colleagues, and making sure that they have the kind of, you know, development and experience that they need. So we're looking at, you know, the new trainees being in 3 days a week, but then making sure that there are adequate numbers of more experienced colleagues in on those days to support them and give them the right kind of work experience that they're looking for. And again, you know, for people who aren't necessarily new joiners or new trainees, we're looking at more junior colleagues spending possibly 2 days in the office, and again, having appropriate people around them so that they can learn from them and ask questions and so on. So it's very much around development of less experienced colleagues at the moment, and making sure that they're adequately supported.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
A couple more here.
I'll scroll down.
Are we doing temperature checks on employees and visitors? No, we're not, or not at the moment.
Somebody else has asked, who is chairs running the Keeping in Touch Zoom calls? Yeah, it's myself. So Kate, I run those sessions. We sometimes, there's not necessarily agenda for those, but we do have sort of whatever's happening in the world at that time. So last week we were talking very much about returning to school, how people are feeling about, you know, planning, going back to school, thoughts, feelings, worries. So we don't have a set agenda, but it's very much based on what's happening in the world at the time, and we sort of relate that to being a parent and a carer. The rest were about temper checks, weren't they? Yeah.
There's one other that I think, Tash, that we haven't picked up, which is, are we sort of holding back on flexible working requests to work permanently from home? I mean, we haven't had a sort of stated position on that, nor have we had any. So, but again, I think, you know, we would look at, well, what are the needs of the business? What are the needs of colleagues and the needs of the individual?
And there's another question here. Do you think the overall experience has improved staff loyalty for the longer term for furloughed and non-furloughed staff? I would like to think yes, because I think the staff have, you know, we've done, like Sandy said, we've done very much everything we can to furlough as least people as possible. We haven't made anyone redundant, and we've tried to put as much as possible well-being and other aspects of support as much as we can. And I know that the feedback I have when I have my sessions with them, they very much value that. So I'm hoping, and I'm sure that will improve staff loyalty, because people do feel they have been supported. So I'd like to say yes on that. Anything you want to add, Sandy?
No, I mean, I would like to, you know, hope that the position is as you have stated, Tash.
Yeah, and me. We know there's always some people who may not feel that way, but I think on the whole, people are generally feeling that they've been supported. And if anybody comes with a different suggestion, we always look at it and see what we can do. We're always open to listening to what people's needs are. Any more questions? Let me have a look. We've got a couple of minutes. Oh, here we go. What sort of physical wellbeing activities have you done since March? So we have we've done like various, as well as the yoga. So we have been doing the yoga internally. We've also done sort of different challenges in the offices. So we've done sort of whether it's walking challenges and all different challenges, sort of a bit of a competition across the offices. So we've done those sort of activities since March. So things people can do at home, and then they can sort of email in their sort of updates. So we've done the yoga and we've done office. We've got which we didn't mention actually, we've got really good and active social committees. So each office has got a social committee, and they're very much been the ones doing the sort of physical well-being as well as the internal. And obviously we promote and have sent out a range of people in terms of what they can do at home as well, and signposting. Well, it's nearly time. So I think, unless anybody's got anything burning, we will wrap up now because it's nearly coming to 11:45. So I hope you have found that useful. I hope that you've enabled you to find out more, or, you can get hold of us. You want to go to the next slide, Sandy, with the feedback, and yeah, brilliant. So if there's anything you want to tell us about how we did, anything you'd like to hear more about, please let us know. But also get in touch with us individually if you'd like to know more, and obviously just let us know if there's anything else you'd like to hear about. Any more, Sandy, before we sign off?
No, I don't think so, Tash.
Lovely jubbly. Thank you.